Welcome to the Donna Howell Show. Today we are going to do something a little bit different. Brittany is gone, but she will be back. I have with me on set today Lynette Hill. Welcome. This woman is amazing. Your story is so miraculous. Lynette was told your scans are not the scans of a person who lives. You had stage 4 breast cancer spread throughout your entire body. And you had also been told at one point that you have got to get your affairs in order because you have, and I quote, months to live.
Yes.
Tell me about how you are here today, 100% in perfectly beautiful health. Cancer's gone. This is an amazing story, a story of a miracle. And we're going to talk about those miracles in a moment. There's an angle about this miracle that I really love that's very different from some of the I went to the altar and prayed and my cancer was gone the next day type stories. Tell us about where all of this began. You were outside playing with your dogs and your phone rang after an urgent care trip.
Yes.
Because you were having restroom regularity issues. And start from there. What's the story?
So in July of 2021, I actually got my diagnosis. But prior to that, just a few weeks prior to that, I had a call from an urgent care doctor. And he said to me, I need you to go to your primary doctor immediately. He says, you cannot wait a month. You cannot wait 2 months. And I asked him why, but he couldn't tell me. He said, I've sent all the information to your primary doctor. So I went to my primary doctor, called them actually. And because of COVID protocols at the time, they didn't have any openings. They said, we can't see you for 3 to 4 months. And I said, oh, no. You cannot wait 3 to 4 months, according to the doctor. I need to come in right now. But as I was saying, and it's in my book, God was in every part of this journey because my daughter-in-law happened to work in that office. So I hung up and I called her on her cell phone and I said, this is what the urgent care doctor said. I don't have months to wait. I need to see the doctor now. So she got me in, and over a series of him doing his own test, that's when he called me and said, your results came in and you have cancer. And the reason you couldn't go to the bathroom is you have a 12-centimeter mass on your ovaries that's pushing against your colon, and that's why you couldn't go to the bathroom.
A 12-centimeter mass was not the only thing you were dealing with. This had metastasized through your whole body. It was very bleak. You happened to mention the book a moment ago, so I'll hold it up so you viewers can take a look. This is Overcoming Cancer from Despair and Desperation to Hope, Life, and a Newfound Mission. It is available in print, on Kindle, and over Audible. One of the things that I love about this book that kind of went in a direction that a lot of these stories don't go in, usually when people think healing and God, they think of something that does not require any of their natural effort to procure. Right. They think of it as so-and-so had cancer. She went to a conference or, revival ceremony or a church or whatever, and they went down at the altar and they said, Lord, heal me. And the story usually goes, they rose up out of the wheelchair and they ran across the stage. And then the doctor confirms it the next day, look, I am not putting that kind of healing down. I'm not putting that kind of healing down. That's wonderful. But a lot of people assume that if they don't get that healing, there's no healing that they can achieve by doing anything that is within their own natural power. And one of the things that I love about your story is that God, in a series of steps, revealed to you that you also had to be a part of your healing. Right. And it has to do kind of with his medicine versus the world's big pharma or pharmaceutical medicines. I know you did sit down and talk more at length with Joe about that. Those were great shows. I want to hear about that specifically. There is a relationship between Western medicine and natural medicine, and God's medicine is natural medicine. I guess there's this whole kind of an approach to Western medicine today. People are very afraid to move outside that. So you got terrible bad news.
Yes.
What happens next?
So when I got the phone call and I got the results and I started the treatment, I didn't know any better. I was not on any medication prior to that, had no comorbidities, was never in and out of the hospital except to have my 5 beautiful sons. That's the only hospital trip I ever had. So when I got that diagnosis, like most people, I was afraid. So I wanted to live. So I immediately started on the treatment that the doctor recommended. And I was always a praying person. But for some reason, I did not pray for instant healing. My mind was in so many different places that I didn't even know instant healing was possible, even though, like you were saying, when people go to revival and they get healed instantly, God is very capable of doing that. But God uses each of our journey for his own purpose. And my journey was to be used in a different way, other than the miraculous healing. I truly believe now that my journey was to bring people back to the original medicine, because we've been told that original medicine is quackery and that Western medicine is the gold standard.
Or it doesn't work. We kind of have a corporate opinion that's like, yeah, drink tea, eat celery. It ain't working.
Right.
It's
exactly.
Just, yeah.
Yes. But people need to go back to the fact that before Big Pharma came along, we all lived off the land. You could go back thousands of years. If something was wrong with you, pull a herb out of the ground or pull something off the tree. Even in Genesis, where I believe, don't quote me, God said, I created every herb for the benefit of man. The trees are for the healing of the nations in Revelation. It even talks about wormwood in the Bible as a deworm. I mean, there's so many things that this journey brought me back to the real medicine. And through that real medicine is where I obtained my healing.
And you had a friend, Sicilin, who kind of out of the blue spoke over you in this kind of a radically miraculous moment, and you clung to that. Share that moment with us. What did Sicilin say?
Yeah, so she said to me when she came over that I was not going to die, that God was going to heal me. And then she brought up a story that I didn't even know, and she's a childhood friend that we've known for years, that she had cancer. She was diagnosed over 20 years ago with cancer, and they told her that it was terminal. It was stage 4. And she told the doctor, okay, thank you for letting me know. And she left and went and completely changed her diet. And she didn't say that she healed her cancer, because she said, I don't know if I still have cancer. I just never went back. And so I'm looking at her like, in my mind, well, I don't want to still walk around with cancer. But it didn't even click at that point that she healed and she was still here 20 years later just by changing what she ate. But for me, I wanted to get rid of the cancer. So those two things didn't click yet, even though she said, no, God's going to touch you. You're going to be healed. I did. I hung on to that. But it still didn't click. I need to go through natural healing.
You were thinking, chemotherapy is still the way he's going to deliver this healing?
Yes.
So then what happens after that? Because this is the part I get excited about when I realize that, the Western idea, you're talking Western medicine. For me, it's Western theology. I'm constantly challenging Western theology, and a lot of the ideas that come from that is, by his stripes we are healed of anything, right. Physically, emotionally, spiritually, which that is actually the context of that verse is spiritual. And this other idea, when two or more are gathered, that gets quoted a lot. If two or more are gathered, they can agree on literally anything, as long as it's, it sounds like it's going to be something really good. It's going to happen.
Right.
And for you, it did happen, but it happened because you had to also say, okay, Lord, I submit. There's the Western thing. That's the world that everybody feels more comfortable in because we have science and we have the authority of the people in lab coats with the neat little things embroidered on the pocket and all these things. And we get into that and we go into these buildings and they're big and they're beautiful and they're opulent and there's all this high tech everywhere. And you think, well, sure, I'm going to put my life in the hands of this.
Right.
This is where all of the information comes from. They know what they're doing. They're professionals. They're experts. And then on the more natural side, you have right now this idea, I'm afraid of that because it's the territory of the unknown. But like you said at the beginning of the show, that's where we've spent our entire human history.
Yes.
Is in the bubble of living off the land and furthermore taking the medicines that comes out of the leaves and the trees, that plants that God has made.
Yes.
So, you just read the first chapter of Genesis, you get it. God put every medicine on our planet to
Absolutely.
cure everything. And why are we afraid of that? It's because we are continuously told that there is no cure for this, there is no cure for that.
Exactly.
And your story miraculously, completely slaps that upside the head and defies that directly.
Right.
By saying, no, God's medicine does work. It healed me. I love your story. And I love the fact that you clung to the promise that he delivered through Sicilin.
Right.
So you were in the hospital there for a while. There's a chapter that you have here called Here in the Twilight Zone. It started also with the chapter right before that called The Day I Died. Tell us about that particular part of your story, because there might be people out there that think, well, up until the end, she might have still just been up and running around. Maybe she did have this terrible diagnosis. Maybe somebody got it wrong. They saw a blob on a scan wrong. No, it was bad.
It was bad.
What happened with that when you were in the hospital?
When I went through the treatment, there was so many side effects. I was one of those people that if you pulled out the side effects list on the medication, that was me. Every side effect. I had the mouth sores, the diarrhea, the vomiting. I had to go in and have blood transfusions. I had to go in and have hydration. It was a constant thing, the mouth sores, the weight loss. When I finally ended up in the hospital with my blood pressure 60/40, and I was
Dear Lord.
fading, and the doctor told my husband, we have to rush her to ICU. Her organs are starting to shut down. I don't know if she's going to make it. And it was during COVID protocol. My husband couldn't come with me, no family. And I knew I was dying. I was so out of it at that point that when I went to ICU, I just released myself. I said, okay, God, I guess I'm coming home. I didn't remember the promise of Sicilin in that moment, that I was going to be healed, that God was going to touch me. But I trusted whatever God's will was, and I just surrendered. And when I woke up and the doctor said, welcome back, I was so disoriented because I thought I was going to wake up in heaven. And I'm looking around, there's lights, there's beeping, that I'm still in the hospital. It's just really hard to put into words what I was feeling in that moment. But I knew that God had given me another chance at life. And I was grateful for that.
Yeah, one of the pictures that you had featured in that chapter showed you kind of lifting up your arm because you're like, who is this lady taking pictures of me? And you ended up with that picture. And the contrast between the woman in that photo and the woman sitting here in the Donna Howell show now is, I think Joe said it really well. When you showed up at the door yesterday to our studios, he said, you look so much younger now than even the last time I saw you. And then today he said, you look younger today than you did yesterday. It's kind of like you're just going backwards in your age, but you're healthy and you're glowing. And there's no reason at all for you to be here right now, except for the blood and mercy of the sacrificial action of Christ on the cross, but also the plans that God put here from the beginning.
Right. And that's how you know, in my opinion, that this was a miraculous healing from God, because the contrast from where I was to now, it is completely God. But you said something earlier, I wanted to back up a little bit. You talk about how the doctors, they have their lapel, they have all these things, so we trust in them. And what I've learned through this journey is doctors went to school to learn a specific thing. If it's this diagnosis, this is the medication. If it's this is the surgery. They're in their lane. You went to school and I could quiz you about the Bible as a theologian, and you know all of that because that's your education. So when we are looking at doctors, we have to understand they only know what they know, what they've learned, and we love them. They serve a purpose. But I try to tell people when they're advocating for their health, if you're having an electrician come to your house to rewire your house, you're going to follow that electrician around. You're going to ask him all kinds of questions because you don't want your house to burn down. If a mechanic is working on your car, you're going to ask them a million questions because you want your car fixed. That's part of your livelihood. It's the same thing with a doctor. Why don't we ask doctors questions? Why do we just take what they say and just go with it and not advocate for our own health? We have to ask questions. This is our life. And at the end of the day, if we die, the medical industry moves on. But someone's lost a mom, a sister, a child, a brother. So it's more important to advocate for our life than it is for our house or a car, whatever. For me, it's all about educating people now. Not that I'm a doctor or anything, but it's just so they can advocate and ask questions. That's it. There are so many things that are out there that help with healing our bodies. It is absolutely amazing because our bodies, by God's infinite design, was designed to repair and to heal itself if we give it the right environment. So there's many things out there, but the 3 things I took from my journey is soursop tea, apricot kernels, and black seed oil. And each of those things on their own do so much, but together it was a powerhouse for me. And those are the 3 things I still take today for prevention because that journey was so horrible. I never want to go through that again.
I know there's some people that heard what you just said and they're saying, how do you know it wasn't the chemotherapy that cured you and not the natural God medicines on our planet?
I'm so glad you asked that because I actually stopped every Western treatment and then went natural. And when I stopped the Western treatment at the end of my Twilight Zone thing in the hospital, I still had the 12-centimeter mass on my ovaries. I still had the cancer in my bones and throughout my body. So I stopped everything and then went the natural route.
And you say you still had the cancer in your body. That was confirmed by scans.
Yes.
It was still there.
Yes.
When you stopped chemotherapy.
Correct.
So it's not the chemotherapy that cured you.
No.
And this is the message that you want to take to the airwaves. In fact, you've already started taking to the airwaves. From what I understand, you've got some videos out there that are in the millions of views.
Yes.
Everybody right now wants to hear, how did this lady do it?
Yes.
And that's how you did it.
As a matter of fact, I was telling Mr. Horn that on his show, Defender Insider, earlier, that when I go places now, people will say, hey, you're the TikTok lady. I'm taking soursop because of you. I don't even have cancer, but I don't want cancer. So yeah, it's been amazing because it's just to get God's medicine out there. That's all I want to do. That's my whole journey now. I've given this entire journey over to God. My life, my will, everything this is his now.
Well, it is an enormous honor to have the Lynette Hill not only here because you are a celebrity out there talking about all of this, but because you're alive and well. To me, that's the more exciting part.
Yes.
I mean, I can fangirl all day about the fact that I'm sitting here and sharing a room with you, but on the other hand, I'm just sitting here going, I can't believe you're alive. Yeah. You're not just alive, you're thriving.
Yeah, and people message me all the time because they saw my video. It's almost a year to the date that I put that video out, and they'll message me a year later, so how are you still doing? And I'm like, I am doing amazing. As a matter of fact, I had another scan just in January, which is a year later from my clear scan. And what's interesting about this specific scan is a few months prior to that, my doctor, I go in for, lab work and all of that because there's technically no cure for stage 4, but I know God's already cured me. But they can't put on the books that she's cured, because medically speaking, there's no cure for stage 4 cancer. So when I went in to do my regular lab work, she says, Lynette, if I wasn't your oncologist from the beginning of the journey till now, you could never tell me you had stage 4 terminal cancer. She said, you look amazing. And that is when I shared with her what I've been doing. So she immediately scheduled a scan for me because she knew that she stopped chemo and she went to natural medicine. She knew my cancer was going to come back. So in January of this year, 2024, when she called me in for the results, she said to me, Lynette, you're upending everything I know. And I said, what do you mean? She says, because we tell people when you stop your treatment, your protocol that we give you for 5 years, and at the end of it, you ring the bell because you're in remission, or you pass away. We don't want you to pass away. We hope you go into remission. She says, but when you told me you stopped treatment 6 months into a 5-year protocol, she says, I knew your cancer was going to come back. So when I scheduled the scan for you and I received the scan results, I knew your tumor was going to start growing back. I knew your cancer was going to, I knew something was going to be on that scan. She says, for your scan to come out clear again, she just threw her hands up and said, I'm so happy for you. But she was in shock.
Yeah, but to some degree, you weren't, depending on how one wants to interpret the word living, you weren't living anyway. When you were in your chemotherapy days, as your book tells, your book doesn't go into anything disturbing. Thank you for that, by the way. Your book does not go into anything disturbing, but it does allow the reader to understand some of the symptoms that are the side effects of chemotherapy. And with the ones that you go through in your book, They're insane. I was in tears many times throughout that particular section of the book because I'm like, that's just a nightmare. Your
horrible.
skin was completely peeling off like a snake everywhere.
Yes.
You'd completely lost your hair. The nausea that you were going through 100% around the clock every single day. It was
Yes.
torture.
Yes.
You had mouth sores. There's pictures of the mouth sores, and I've seen the pictures in color. It was a side effect of the chemotherapy as
Correct.
well. Your body was just being poisoned.
Yes.
So you were still alive, but you weren't living, if that
At
makes
all.
sense.
Oh, yes, it does. I was not living. And what their plan was, because there was no cure for me and it was so terminal, their plan was to give me a quality of life. So if that was the quality of life that I was going to have on this treatment, no, thank you. I knew there had to be something different. This cannot be the way we heal. So that's what started me on that journey, to find something else.
Right. Probably one of the worst takeaways a person could have, especially after we just discussed some of the chemotherapy side effects that you'd shared, is the idea that this is just a doom and gloom story that just kind of tilts up at the end and has a happy ending. It's actually quite the opposite. The largest amount of tears shed while I was going through this book with you, side by side. So if the reader's wondering, I did help edit some of the parts together in the right order and different things like that, just based on industry standards of delivery. What I loved about your book is that it doesn't have a big doom and gloom. It's all sad. And then at the very end, dun, 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 I lived. It's more like it starts with this really bad news. And then there's this moment where you've had your cry on the edge of the bathtub.
Yes.
And then you say, God, you didn't put me here to die this way. I absolutely know that, and I'm clinging to all hope. You're going to bring me through this.
Yeah.
I have alligator skin. In fact, that's even what your book called it, the alligator skin, because you barely briefly touched on it, but in some of the rough edges around the childhood and different other parts of your past story, you were shaped into a stronger metal, and you
Yes.
were saying, I'm going to get through this. And then there was this moment right after you've dedicated to that, then things get a little bit worse.
Yeah.
And you're like, I don't care. I'm sticking to this promise. Then Sislyn comes in and says what she says about the promise of God. And so your book has a really good rhythm to it. When you're like, oh, this looks bad, you're like, whoa, this is so cool. There's so much triumph in this moment. And
Yes.
then in that moment, you are cancer free. The readers almost can't even believe that it's true, except it's literally true. The pictures in your book are proving this. You've got such an incredible story. I want everybody to have this as the takeaway. This book, which is available in 3 formats, Kindle, print, and Audible, it delivers good news. It delivers the idea that, look, you've heard your friend at church say that healing is available for you.
Yes.
If you have not received it through a radical moment at a conference, or you went to a revival and you went down to the altar, if it didn't come that way, God's not finished with your story yet.
Right.
And there might be another way of receiving that healing. And in your particular case, it's almost as if, and I don't want to speak for God and I don't want to speak for you, but it's almost as if God said, Lynette, I'm going to heal you, but I'm going to do it in this way because I want that to be the medicine and the testimony that you take to the world.
Right.
And I love that about your story. Where can people find out more about you?
So they can go to speakerlynette.com, and that will have all my social media icons that they could click on and follow me there. But that would be the place to start. But I want to back up, if I can, for a moment, because
Sure.
you mentioned something earlier about when I was sitting here and you were fangirling because I was here in your studio. I honestly am sitting here completely, I don't know the right word for it, because you're Donna Howell. And when you invited me to your show, I was so excited to be here, because not only did you take my story, and I hope I don't get emotional, but I like to reference it was when God created man, and right, he just created man. And then he breathed into man his own breath, and man became a living soul. Yes, this is my story, but what you did to it with your master editing and what you did and how you and I were in contact, and you brought this story to life. And I am truly, eternally grateful for that, because you made my story amazing. My story was already amazing because God is in it. And it shows you that God is with you in every storm of your life. As long as you put him first, he will go before you and make the crooked places straight. But what you did, brought my story to life. And I hope that every single person that reads this story sees you behind the scenes and take this story and know that God could do amazing things in their life if they allow him to do it. Because God is just amazing and he wants to be in every part of our journey if we let him. And I'm just so grateful for what you did with this book and with my story. I love you forever. Seriously. Sorry.
I cannot tell you what that means. That is a big bit of feedback coming back, and to be on the other side of the publication of it, to actually hold this gem in my hands and to see it and to feel it and touch the pages and turn it, and being involved with you from the beginning of the writing of the book, not the beginning of your journey with with healing, but the beginning of the writing of your book and forward to now. This has been an immense blessing for me as well, and I am so honored to have Lynette Hill, the Lynette Hill, on the Donna Howell Show. She's done a whole slew of media programs, including Skywatch TV. And I hope this thing gets out to the airwaves. I hope everybody hears about your book. I hope everybody rushes out to buy a copy of your book, not just because you have a book now and people should buy it, but because I think they can actually benefit from the testimony. Yeah. I think if they can't benefit from the protocol and the natural regimen that you share based on what you did in your cancer journey, which is very relevant to anybody out there who is sick. Yes. I also physically sick. I also think that there is so much that can be gained for the person who is in a completely different journey, yes, fighting with a loved one, or, just going through, the valley of the shadow of death in some emotional or spiritual way, or they're sitting there going, God, where are you? Your story has touched on all of those elements. And it is such a miraculous testimony, yes, of healing, not just physical, but emotional, spiritual. And where you're at today, you're thriving. You're glowing. It's been amazing. Brittany will be back. And in the meantime, thank you so much for joining us on the Down.
Thank you for having me. Thank you so much.